Hello, everyone. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
Perfect. Yeah, first things first, H2O is important, but anyway. Thank you so much for joining us today and for staying with us in the afternoon as well. Today, our panel right now is going to talk about leveraging FinTech to further the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Now, if you do know, there are around 17 of those goals right now which the United Nations has put forward, and it addresses a range of issues, including sustainability, poverty, climate change, as well as financial inclusion. And if I may quote the United Nations, they're basically using this as a blueprint to achieve a better and more sustainable future for us all. And that is why it is so important to have this discussion right now. Where does FinTech fit into all of this? As we all know, FinTech has made the world a more inclusive place. It has made financial services very inclusive. And we are going to talk about what role does it have to play in rebuilding our economy in a more sustainable way. And of course, it's not just me talking. So today I'm joined with a stellar panel, and I would love for them to introduce themselves. So Blair, do you want to go first?
Sure, thank you. Thanks for the invite. Blair Halliday, so I'm the head of UK at Gemini. For those that aren't aware who Gemini are, we're a crypto exchange and custodian. We were founded in the US in 2015 and launched there in 2016. We've been in the UK for about just over a year. We're one of the few FCA-approved crypto asset firms. There's about 12. We were the second and third firms because we're greedy. We're also a regulated e-money institution as well. Gemini as a company has been founded on the foundational pillars of compliance, licensing, security, and product, and we like to think that that kind of sets us apart. And crypto is crypto is obviously where we're primarily in, and we certainly see that the now and the future of crypto really kind of heavily supports those UN goals. And I'm certainly here to kind of dissuade those that are concerned about the green side of crypto. And so, depending on your perspective, you think I'm either Darth Vader or Luke Skywalker. So hopefully, I'll kind of err you over to the latter on that. But pleased to be here, and over to you.
Thanks. Hi, my name is Annika Monari. I'm the founder and CEO of Otus Marketplace. We are a marketplace that works with the food and drinks industry, retailers in particular, and what we do is we work with them to replace their existing products with more ethical products that match their customer needs and their brand values that ultimately result in 10% more revenue on that area of shelf space. So our mission is ultimately to make the industry, the food and drinks industry, more sustainable by, making companies like Oatly, companies like Brewdog, companies like Tony Chocolonely the norm rather than the exception.
Perfect, yeah.
Hi, I'm Henry White, co-founder and CEO of Finance Unlocked. My background originally a hedge fund analyst, then moved into technology, startups and scale-ups the past 10 years. And I co-founded Finance Unlocked 4 years ago with Rob Ellison. Finance Unlocked is an education technology platform focused primarily on a B2B audience, financial professionals. We have customers including large banks, asset managers, law firms, business schools across the world. And the easiest way to describe us is like a Netflix for finance. So we have an on-demand video platform that we produce all our own content, our own technology, and we have about 150 experts on the platform who deliver their expertise. And I think why I'm probably sitting here is probably two reasons in terms of the UN Sustainable Goals and FinTech for Good. One is some of the work that we have done. So on our travels, we originally created the products for financial professionals in the B2B environment, but we noticed that this product is actually very useful for aspiring financial professionals, for students, for people who don't have access perhaps to some of the same opportunities that others did. And so we worked with Innovate Finance and the FinTech for Schools initiative. And during the closures of universities at the start of COVID, we opened the platform for free to university students and had 10,000 signups. And then more recently, we've done some great work in partnership with Santander. We've been educating 3,000 black and mixed race students. and the feedback has been great, saying that it's really opening the possibility into a career in finance that they hadn't had before. And secondly, just last week we actually launched our second education platform, and that is Sustainability Unlocked. And so that has been born out about 12 months worth of work, launching with about 30 hours of content. We've got speakers such as Sarah Breeden, Mark Carney, Sir Ronald Cohen. So very, very relevant. But again, same audience, financial institutions and fintechs looking to empower their employees to solve the world's sustainability crisis and reach their net zero 2050 pledges.
Perfect. Thank you so much, guys. And I'm Rashi Pandey. I'm Head of Partnerships and Growth at Innovate Finance. So let's dive right in. And Blair, I will ask you this question first, since you are a fintech. Can you please just, shed light on how the fintech industry and what can it do to help independent businesses find sustainable products and ethical products?
So, well, look, Gemini is labelled many different things. So we're a fintech. If you look at our e-money institution license, we're a crypto firm. If you look at crypto, I think, looking kind of just purely from our kind of perspective, I think it's really important that, as from a sustainability perspective, I'm looking at it purely as a crypto company here. It's kind of recognising the opportunities. It's, as I say, focusing purely on crypto here, about the opportunities that crypto opens up to the world economy, and that's to the UK economy and globally as well. I think if we look at it from that perspective, it removes barriers to entry. It certainly kind of decreases costs for individuals and businesses alike. It isn't just a kind of an add-on to an existing payments infrastructure. It provides something completely different. Certainly on the kind of fintech side of things, I think it's just important that fintechs in general kind of provide their customers with options, open things up, be more transparent. Crypto, blockchain, DLT, all of that kind of provides a little bit more transparency to the more kind of opaque nature of existing kind of infrastructure. So I think openness and transparency is a big part of that.
Thank you. How about you, Annika? Openness and transparency, do you agree?
Yeah, I mean, tying into what Blair was saying, I think, one of the things we're doing to help these businesses find ethical products, right, is these ethical brands need to be empowered to grow. And right now they're being constrained because there are intermediaries who are creating high fees for borrowing money, creating high fees for finding deals. And what that's resulting in is that next Oatly isn't becoming the next Oatly because they just can't go and do that deal with Sainsbury's or whomever because they just don't have the cash flow, they don't have the working capital. And so crypto and blockchain and things like this are really important because, for example, what we're doing is we're trying to leverage it to provide cheaper financing options to these businesses so that even though the retailer will only pay them in 3 months and they have to deliver inventory today, they're able to borrow money against that and actually at a much lower rate than what exists today and do that deal that currently they're losing out to from one of the big guys. So I would agree. I know that a few panels today, there's certainly a bit of apprehension around crypto maybe, but I think that, blockchain in general does lower the barriers to financing for smaller businesses, and it's the smaller businesses that are trying to push, more ethical behavior, right? So I think, we have to support it.
Yeah, and just adding on to that, actually, I think because of the pandemic, and I think I've definitely been one of them, but we have started shopping a lot more locally as well right now. So since you do run a marketplace platform, how do you ensure that, these independent businesses do get the best deal discovery?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I guess the why is after the pandemic, they did surveys and it's 65% of consumers will buy locally. But then also 90% of consumers actually, when they're given the choice of a product that's ethical or that has a brand that matches the causes they care about and things like this, compared to a less conscious counterpart, right? So, some soft drink versus a more ethical one, 90% of consumers will choose the more ethical one. But currently, like, these retailers, they don't really get the chance to work with these smaller brands because, like I said before, it's just not viable, right? They just don't have the cash flow to be able to buy enough inventory to service these deals. And so not only do you have to disintermediate in some shape or form, right, and sit in the middle, and that's kind of what we do. We try and work with a lot of these brands and, help them, get enough working capital so they can do these deals. But then also on the retailer side, and I think it really ties into how we, in general, as the industry, further the UN Sustainable Development Goals. We have to solve problems better than the existing solutions, but make sure our solution is sustainable, right? We need to bring sustainability almost as like a Trojan horse in a way by just giving the best solution to these people. And so one thing we notice is retailers, they just don't actually know enough about their customers. They don't know enough about the products out there. They don't have the time to find the best products. And so we realized that we could use artificial intelligence to basically analyze their customer needs, the different companies around them, and find them more ethical products that would result in 10% more revenue on every inch of shelf space. So we use that as the way to start bringing them these deals, helping with the deal discovery, but making sure that every product we bring them is ethical.
So we've talked a lot about using technology and, digitization and, how it is really helping all of us move towards a more sustainable way of living. But I'll play the devil's advocate, and I would like to ask you guys, are there any trade-offs to consider in using, these digitization and these technology and these tools to reach the UN Sustainable Development Goals? For example, there is a disparity. Not everybody has a smartphone. So this one's for you, Henry. What are your thoughts?
So I think the most obvious one in terms of disparity is probably digitization. Particularly between the developed and the developing world. So if we look at the 17 UN Sustainable Development Goals, 7 of them are about financial inclusion and education. And from our standpoint, if we kind of focus on education for a second, the 4th one is about quality education. And the goals that are set out is by 2030, to have all children to have primary and secondary, to have access to primary and secondary education globally. Now, the actual fact is that it's very different. Pre-pandemic, about 50% of children didn't have proficiency in numeracy and literacy globally. And that's obviously only been exacerbated during COVID. So with 91% of school closures globally, that's just further accelerating this trend. And that's going to marginalize kind of vulnerable groups and developing countries more and more. Within that, there are solutions. There's the 3 ones that the UN really pulls out. One is around actually the importance of parents teaching. The second is starting early. But the third is access to education. And you think about the digital elements of that. Of course, we can teach face-to-face, we can teach in classrooms, but that's not completely scalable when we're thinking about the world globally. So there is disparity there. I think where there is hope is that if you look in kind of payments and in banking, we've actually done incredibly to move up that curve very quickly. So if you take, for example, some of the developing countries within Asia and Africa, they might not have had access to a bricks and mortar bank, but through mobile payments, through mobile software, which has far outstripped the growth of hardwired infrastructure within their countries, they've been able to get to kind of mass advocacy of access to payments. So I think now it's 69% of the world has access. So I think there is an element, there is an issue, and it's something that I think COP will really dig into in November. Will be this disparity between the developed and developed world, and making sure that one of the main themes around the access to capital, not just into the developed world who has a lot of the innovation, but in making sure that the developing world is moving at pace as well.
No, thank you. I do agree with that, coming from Thailand, being a Thai-born Indian myself. Blair, you did mention that crypto can be green, but talking about blockchain and, like we said, playing the devil's advocate again here, blockchain can also, run the risk of just, being known as being so energy intensive. Is it really worth it?
Loaded question there. Well, yes. Next. No, look, I get the perspective, and I think looking at it from kind of an overarching piece, we've moved on so far. We look at if I focus in on Bitcoin in particular, which is obviously the world's best known and largest cryptocurrency. We're kind of entering in 12 years of that now. And, you talk about the worth it kind of scenario. Well, we've kind of moved from, in the last 12 years, the growth of that particular coin has developed to the point where past the 3 trillion market cap. So clearly there is value there and there's a worth there. And if you look at cryptocurrency and in general, across the board, and I referenced Bitcoin there, but there are a multitude of other ones. The removal, we talked about barriers to entry there before, and the opportunity that it gives, and it can be a little bit difficult to kind of conceptualize this when we're sitting in the UK or the US or wherever else, when we kind of have a clear understanding of, how the marketplace works. But in other countries where barriers to entry are greater, are real, they have governments where the value of their currency fluctuates enormously. I mean, frankly, that's happening now. I mean, I'm terrified about how much a loaf of bread is going to cost me when I walk out of here. But in all seriousness, we have there is a value proposition that is much greater than many people kind of understand just yet. But more and more people are getting into it, and the UK market in particular. The FCA announced they did their survey earlier on this year. 2 million people kind of in the UK have or currently hold or kind of have been interested in investing in crypto. 2 million, that's quite a substantial number of people, and I'm sure that's going to grow continually. We also recognise that there are some things that crypto firms and the crypto industry kind of need to work through, and the green component of that is one that we're kind of looking at. Gemini in particular. We announced a Gemini Green initiative earlier this year, where we've offset 350 kilotons of Bitcoin-related carbon. We've also invested $1 million into a Frontier Fund, which focuses on supporting green initiatives, particularly in that kind of blockchain space. And look, that's a starter for 10, and we, as part of all of that, we need to kind of work a lot of that into the way we kind of do business. But I think, sometimes it's very easy to kind of point the finger at crypto firms or blockchain in particular, and that's because of the transparency. It's very easy to understand that because crypto is transparent. Let's kind of look at all around us here. We've got towers of banking, of payment institutions, of whatever else. It's a far more opaque situation that it's also kind of plowing through, many tons of carbon as well. But crypto enables people to really understand the trajectory and the usage and the energy usage. So we welcome that. We welcome the transparency. We welcome the discussion, and and I think that's really important to kind of think about things. Not just the cost, but also the benefit it's providing globally.
If I can
please
also
go
add,
on.
Yeah, if I can also add, I don't, not all cryptos are equal. I think that's an important point as well. Something like Bitcoin, you have to essentially invest power to mine, to basically get the currency out effectively. But other cryptos are all moving towards a model that the energy consumption is more alike to something like Facebook or WhatsApp than, some big tower of power trying to get currency out of something. So I think it's also important to note that, just like Blair was saying, with the transparency, yeah, we can all, point fingers at crypto because you can count everything up. But really, if you were to count the energy consumption of some of these big apps and, websites out there and compare it to some of the newer cryptos, it's not going to be much different. So I think.
Sorry, go on.
I was just going to say, no, that's an excellent point. And we've recently just put on our exchange MCO2, which is a new coin which offsets carbon as well. So, it's a fantastic point. And, it's most certainly not everything is equal.
Like you mentioned, transparency. So I will give you the title of Luke Skywalker then, instead of Darth Vader of Star Wars. So, Annika, you also mentioned SMEs. They are the life and blood of the UK economy. We all know that. They make 99.9% of the business population, which is around 6 million businesses in the UK. So how will moving towards a decentralized finance model help the UK SMEs grow? And I'm only asking that because the traditional model currently hinders their growth quite a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I'll give you an example. When we first started out, we had a little cash flow thing where we were getting an invoice in 2 months. And, you know, we needed to cover us until then. So we went to look for financing. And, you know, for an invoice finance, we got slapped with a 65% interest rate. And, you know, it was like guaranteed cash flow, right? So I mean, you know, this just like highlights the situation, right, that these people go through. And, you know, if you think about it, the way one of these deals works, right? So let's say you're Oatly. If I'm Oatly and I want to do a deal with, you know, some supermarket, what I have to do is buy the inventory required to do that deal, but I only get paid in 3 months' time. So essentially, I need financing to be able to buy this inventory in advance, right? And so they have that same situation that I had, and sometimes the invoice doesn't even come because of different regulations, so you have to rely on inventory financing, which is even more complicated, and there's even more due diligence, and it's even more costly for these guys, and quite often unviable because it's like £500,000 minimum for that financing. So, you know, I think what decentralized financing does ultimately is it opens up a whole pool of options of, you know, different people, different institutions, different types of currencies, different types of assets that can be used to essentially, you know, provide these guys with the liquidity they need to be able to grow, to make things more sustainable. So, yeah, I think openness, as Blair says.
65%, that's astronomical. Blair, Henry, do you want to add something to this?
Well, look, you know, absolutely. I think that example there is phenomenal. And I think, you know, moving into, you know, and I've referenced crypto a lot here, I think the ability that a different kind of infrastructure provides is the ability not to rely on the existing framework, to have a kind of a more open solution. So there, you know, that peer-to-peer decentralized finance component actually provides a far greater opportunity for more cost-effective finance opportunities for smaller firms, without those, you know, especially those that don't have the infrastructure or the size at present, just to rely on the existing benefits that kind of larger firms have. So, you know, I think the model definitely benefits those that are kind of incumbent. And you know, and of course, people are kind of reluctant to move to another opportunity or another kind of infrastructure when it doesn't benefit them or they're benefiting in the existing framework. So, absolutely, that's a classic and a great example of one where you know, the likes of decentralized finance and a kind of a more broader and transparent kind of framework or infrastructure would actually benefit smaller companies and increase you know, competition.
Well, yeah.
And I think if you focus on the issues here and the problems here facing the SME market, you've had QE now for multiple years, just government's printing. You've got interest rates at zero. You've got inflation now, as Blair was saying, pretty terrifying, about price for loaf of bread as we leave, and probably stagflation as well. And so you couple it all together, it's a pretty bleak environment for SMEs to gain finance. So the crypto market is potentially a solution. I'm not saying here one way or the other. I'm not on Luke's side or Darth's side, but certainly the current way isn't working, and things need to change. And this is what I think these types of environments, plus the perfect storm with COVID and the pandemic, and all the news that came out yesterday around the over 1 million jobs in the UK vacant, but the skills not there to match them. It's kind of a perfect storm for real innovation. Just needs to make sure that kind of the capital flows are going there.
Well, yeah, I agree. I mean, we are here to innovate, so that's why we're all here together. So talking about another uncomfortable topic, greenwashing. So I would like you all to take a stab at this, but Henry, why don't you go first? But what do you think are the best tools to identify greenwashing and green skills washing?
Sure. So I think more broadly, I think with everything in the news at the moment, with what's going on about things I just mentioned, it can seem quite daunting. But at the same time, it is an incredibly exciting period. And I think for the first time ever, you have economies and markets actually truly aligned, not just on shareholder value, but actually on solving the world's greatest issues. So you add kind of the government to the mix, and there is a lot to be done. So if you look at, then sort of think about kind of greenwashing, there's going to be a big gold rush here. So you always see a lot of companies moving into this space. But then with that, there are the pitfalls. There are people who aren't disclosing properly. There'll be penalties along the way as well. So I think what's required here is, from a regulation and a government perspective, is really important steps required there. So I think the keynote speaker next is David Craig, and not to be confused with Craig David. I got quite excited about this panel earlier, but I think certainly will be much more influential in the coming years. And this is on the TNFD, which is a evolution, or not evolution, but they're kind of looking at the framework that the TCFD did, and this is on the nature-based solutions. So that's going to be fascinating to hear that keynote. And then you kind of, as well as that, the importance of companies being responsible, and then fundamentally is then the education aspects as well. Sure. So I think the more kind of transparency in the space, the more that people have to disclose, and education at a kind of a grassroots level, both out there, but also within institutions. I think that this is going to be foster the environment for real change.
I mean, I think we're running out of time, but I would just really love to close on this. But what do you, I mean, we spoke a lot about UK businesses, SMEs, independent businesses. If you had to briefly, tell each one of us, what can we do to reach the UN Sustainable Development Goals? Can you please tell us what we can do and leave us with some food for thought?
Yeah, sure. So for me, I won't mention education. I'll mention actually innovation. I think so. If you look at Bill Gates' most recent book, he mentioned to curb the 7%, or to curb climate change, which is required to decrease carbon emissions by 7% annually. He said the biggest factor is going to be breakthrough technologies. So things that don't just change things slightly, but things that change things by a percentage point each. And so I think everybody in this room, we're lucky enough to be in a position of we can really help and drive that innovation. And institutions like Innovate Finance kind of helping that collaborative nature, making sure that the government's on board, things like COP26 is incredible, shining a light on it. But I think it's real, true innovation that will be the difference.
Annika?
I think for me, a more sustainable world is ultimately driven by the entire supply chain, these entire, industries changing, and that's driven by the consumer. And so you as the consumer can go and choose the ethical product, you can choose the sustainable option, you can ask for those ethical things, and that drives the entire supply chain below you to demand those products from the ones before, and then everyone becomes more sustainable. So choose green.
Choose green, guys. Blair?
Yeah, well, apart from going to Gemini.com and downloading an app and all that kind of stuff, but I would still do that. I think actually, further on to the points here, I think it's about questioning the status quo. It's about kind of, just because something has been always a particular way doesn't mean that should always be the way forward. And I think it's having the openness and the cognitive power to kind of think that maybe something better is out there. Maybe there is a more equal opportunity and society out there, and the way that we accept and send payments may be a great way of kind of or a great footpath into that. So I think I'd just echo the points of my fellow panelists and say, just be open to change and how that might benefit the greater society.
I like that. Be open to change. Be innovative, go green, choose green. And as we close, thank you so much, everyone, for listening in. I would also encourage you to, if you have 2 minutes to spare, please do go on to the United Nations website and check out the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. There's something all of us that can actually do that can make a difference. Thank you.
Wonderful. Great.
Thank you
Rashmi,
all.
thank you very much indeed. Thank you to the panel. Thank you.